What is a travel podcast? This is a travel pod. I guess it's a travel pod, so let's call it a travel pod. This is travel pod, my trip to Berlin, Croatia, and now Zurich, through Venice. And I think Venice is actually a crucial part. That's why I mentioned it. I just passed through from Croatia. I took a boat to Venice and then a plane to Zurich. But Venice is the key, because why is Venice? Venice is very dear to my heart. Why? Because that's where freedom was invented in the Western world. In other words, freedom as we know it today started in Venice. And the reason I say that is for several reasons. One is it was literally the sort of hotbed of Renaissance Europe. Renaissance, the rebirth of the ancient thinking of the Greeks. So certainly the Greek philosophers were the first to start thinking about stuff like logic, math, all that kind of stuff, but also about freedom, democracy. Now, they, of course, didn't invent that either. There was similar stuff going on before, but without going too far back in history, what matters for me here is the following. I want to draw the arch between Venice and what's going on today with blockchain technology, because I think blockchain technology is the next step in the liberalization of human beings, in the deauthorization of human beings. What I mean by that is that we make decisions with less and less authority, because this is exactly what happened in Venice during the Renaissance. It also happened in Florence and Genoa and all these other places in Italy, but it did happen in those places. And the reason it happened is that those places were liberating themselves from the clutches of the church, even though, of course, Italy it still is under the clutch of the church, but they were able to do it in a very healthy way. And they created a culture of professionalism around the law, around accounting, because before that, it was basically the church telling everybody what to think, how to do business, how to generate wealth, and all that stuff. And this was a new beginning for the world. And I mean, you just look at Venice and you see the beauty, and you can see what that does to humans. When freedom is fostered, when creativity happens, when wealth creation fosters freedom, and freedom then vice versa fosters more wealth creation. This is what Venice stands for. And I want to talk about the three big technologies today that I think are propelling us today in a better society, in a more Venice-like society again. I don't know where the Venice of today is. That would be an interesting question to answer. This is Not Even Wrong podcast. It's June 21st, 2022. This is Crim Telco. I'm in Europe right now. The markets are actually open right now, but I just don't have connectivity. So the updates as of last time the market was open, and we're down 49.8%. The market's down 22.9%. We're underperforming by 26.9%. So the three big technologies that are going to make the world a better place, one is intelligent electric cars. The second is digitization of life sciences through technologies like CRISPR, and third is the blockchain technology. I want to talk about those three things and why I think they will have such a big impact on the world and make the world a better place. This is the key. And what we mean with better is, here at Orange Capital Partners, we think very Popperian. So better just means more optionality. That's what it means. So number one, intelligent electric cars. First, the electric side of intelligent gives us more optionality in terms of how we actually fuel our transportation system. The intelligent side of the ledger gives us, first frees us from driving the car, makes us a lot more safe, and also gives us a lot more freedom and flexibility in using transportation as a tool. So for example, today we have a car, we buy a car, first of all, a lot of people still can't afford a car, but let's assume you can afford a car, then it's idle for 80% of the time, and you have problems like where to park it and all that kind of stuff. In the future, an intelligent electric car can drive 24/7. So it's more like let's say an elevator. You just have it and it's being used all the time by people, not just you. Ownership can be, there can be new technologies in terms of ownership. We can have shared ownership. We can have commercial ownership, kind of like a real estate situation maybe, where we have transportation companies. They own cars. They lease them out to people or sell transportation by the mile. So there's a lot of new business models, a lot of new jobs also, new ways to make money, generate wealth. But fundamentally, again, what we think when we say better and large impact also, which is part of our mission statement, we think basically along the lines of just more optionality. The more optionality we have, the better. We're absolutely clear about the fact that every problem we solve, let's say if we solve the driving problem now, we're going to create new problems. Trolley problem, just one of them, of course. But we're going to create better problems. Better problems are problems that are on a sort of higher level of optionality hierarchy. So if we have a problem that is, should I drive my car or not? The answer is yes, you should drive your car because actually I solved the problem by having an intelligent car, so you don't have to drive it anymore. Now the new problem is a trolley problem. The trolley problem is a better problem than should I drive my car. So in that sense, better problem. So anyway, to summarize the first big technology, intelligent electric cars, increase optionality and wealth creation capacity for all societies that are involved. The second, digitization of life sciences. Digitization of life sciences is crucial for two things. One, it will help us find better cures in medicine. And the reason it will do that is because it will become a more engineering-driven discipline versus the bespoke discipline that it is today. You go to the doctor today, they look at you, they have a sense, maybe they have some history, all that kind of stuff. The future will be, what's the data? Give me the data. Give me your DNA, give me your history, your family's DNA. Let me all run a model and see what most likely is the solution. This would be, let's say, on the healthcare side. Of course, on the R&D side, the way you find solutions for medical problem is also much more engineering driven. If you think about somebody who studies engineering today, if I tell you my son is doing engineering, your thought is, okay, first he's in the exact science world, and he's going to do something like building bridges or cars, precise things. You're not thinking of an engineer as building, let's say, a drug or solving a bone problem. Now, in the future, this is our thesis with digitization of life sciences, he might as well be involved in those types of disciplines. Again, the potential for wealth creation is massive because the second big point, so one being that we have a more engineering and bespoke-driven solution space, and second is the cost will come down a lot. We're talking orders of magnitude lower cost with orders of magnitude higher impact, higher value. And that, of course, is exactly the kinds of vectors that we look for at Orange Capital Partners. And now let me talk about the third one, the big one, and that's the one where I want to introduce Venice again, and that is blockchain technology. Now, blockchain technology has a lot of applications, and I don't want to talk about all of them. The one thing that I am most excited about is the potential of our society as a whole on Earth to reorganize ourselves around less authority, because freedom is also making decisions with less authority. The less authority we delegate to people, the more freedom we have. The question, of course, is how do we delegate authority without getting into an anarchy space? So it starts, let's say, the way humans have organized themselves for centuries was through kings. So there was God, there was the church, and the king. And the king is the ruler on earth that is representing God. So if you want, it's kind of a little bit like the US system where the CEO, the president, would be the king, and the church would be the parliament and the jurisdiction in one place. So kind of the sort of the soft stuff, okay, how should we govern? Is the governing proper? Is Henry VIII properly divorced? Can his heir be really King of England? Those are the questions that the church has to answer, and the guy who actually implements policy and spends money and fights wars is the king. So then in the Renaissance, and this is why I'm so fond of Venice, we started getting away from that model and saying, look, we need to delegate a little bit more decision making. First, in terms of business, the king can't run all the businesses. He can't give licenses to everybody. Why don't we introduce a little bit more competition? We need more lawyers because we also want to rely more on real law, not just the law that the king comes up with, but some sort of law that actual lawyers are interpreting. Let's give merchants more power in finding solutions on the commercial front for better products and services. And of course, always on top of minds of kings, also let's have merchants and business people find better weapons, better warfare technology. So that's kind of where Venice lives. Of course, there's also the art world, the Medici, the people that foster the arts and music, and all of that stuff goes together. Then we have the US Revolution and the French Revolution, and I would say probably the US Revolution more important than the French Revolution, even though people spend a lot more time studying the French Revolution. I still don't understand why, because the US Revolution is a lot more important for what was to follow. The French Revolution just created the Napoleonic Wars and basically put back France to almost where it was before, if not even further back, whereas the US Revolution actually propelled the United States into the most powerful country in the world. And the reason it did that is because the greatest leader of all time until now is George Washington. He had the potential to be king, and he gave up to be king, and he actually created a system that created many kings, many people that were always also enticed to give up that power after 4 or 8 years. I think this is the biggest achievement as far as a leader is concerned. And I think the system of democracy has worked incredibly well for 250 years, but it's reaching limits. And I think what we need to have now is a new system, and that's why blockchain technology is so interesting to us. Blockchain technology, in a sense, the way we see it, is it's a solution to the Byzantine Generals problem. How do you make a decentralized decision of what is and what isn't, where nobody really has the power to change the decision or to manipulate the decision? That's the Byzantine Generals problem. For people who are not familiar with it, I don't want to talk about this in this particular episode. I'm going to put some stuff in the show notes or links, or just Google it. You'll find a lot of explanations. It's a very common ComSci problem. Again, Byzantine Generals problem. You have a message that is sent from A to B, and it goes through several couriers. And how do you make sure that once the message gets delivered to B, it's still the right message? How do you make sure that that is the case? That's a decentralized way of information flow, of identity. Also, how do you make sure that the actual courier that is delivering the message is the right courier? So there's a lot of questions to be asked, and the Byzantine Generals problem in general has not been solved until the Satoshi paper and the birth of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first real application of solving the Byzantine Generals problem with a real application, which is Bitcoin and money, and therefore it's very exciting for us. That's why we are at the cusp of a new world order where we can have a lot more of these decentralized decision-making solutions, and our society can morph away from doing trade through authority like banks, lawyers, and politicians towards a more decentralized approach, which again just means that more decisions are delegated to the network. The network, by functioning through validation and blockchain technology, is making sure that what is and what isn't is really what is and what isn't. To paraphrase Silvio Micali, the biggest power anybody ever had is to say what is and what isn't. And even the Sun King in France, or Caesar, or whoever you want to quote here, never had this kind of power. So the network, the blockchain technology that we see coming already is being developed, and hopefully will be developed in the future, is the one which will allow our societies to be governed in a more decentralized way. Now, why is this so exciting? Because it will have the same effect like what Venice had. It will create a more decentralized, a more free world, and more freedom will create more wealth-generation opportunity. Just one example, I could list many. Let's say science today, I think, is sort of in a one-way street, or in a dead end. Maybe that's the better analogy, because we're just stuck in this, like, we have to publish, there's peer reviews, and you want to sound very complicated to impress your peers, and science is very political in a sense, like, wow, what's the interpretation of quantum mechanics? Very political. Should you follow this method or that method? It's not very free. I mean, it's still better than what we had during the church times, but it's not as free as we'd like it to be. And I think blockchain technology could introduce new ways of doing better science, and therefore increase the knowledge creation potential of our society, increase our freedom, increase our technologies, increase everything that is related to technology and science, which hopefully will also create a lot of wealth. So to summarize, the three big technologies here at Orange Capital Partners that we see, the three big technologies that we see at Orange Capital Partners that could propel our society to a much more prosperous and better world. Number one, intelligent electric cars. Number two, digitization of life sciences through genomics and CRISPR. And number three, blockchain technology. and the deauthorization of decision making across the world. Thank you.